So I want you to try and imagine a scenario that, well, it completely breaks our logical understanding of trauma.
Oh, this is a wild one.
It really is. So let's say a wild animal, like a deer, is struck by a vehicle or, shot by a hunter. Its stress levels obviously spike, right?
Right, which makes perfect sense. Sudden, violent injury triggers this massive physiological alarm.
Exactly, but there's this fascinating study published in the European Journal of Wildlife Research, and it shows that if that exact same animal simply gets its leg tangled in a wire fence, its stress hormones, specifically its cortisol levels, they spiked significantly higher than if it had been mortally wounded.
Yeah, it's just a stunning biological reality, and it fundamentally changes how we need to view the natural world, honestly.
Because biologically speaking, for a wild animal, being helplessly trapped in a fence is actually more terrifying than being killed outright.
Yeah. I mean, evolution has programmed wildlife to endure pain, right? But immobility, that is the ultimate death sentence.
Right, because if you can't run,
You're going to get eaten. In the wild, losing the ability to run doesn't just mean you're injured. It basically guarantees that you will be eaten alive. So the data shows that physical immobilization triggers this absolute apocalyptic response in the nervous system.
wow!
Yeah, it goes way beyond just a typical fight or flight reaction.
Which totally upends how we should be viewing those viral wildlife rescue videos online. I mean, you've undoubtedly seen them in your social media feeds.
Oh, constantly.
Yeah, like a hiker finds a trapped wolf, or a fishing crew spots a tangled whale, and someone steps in with, wire cutters or a knife to cut them loose.
And you always see the frantic animal eventually go totally still.
Right. And then after it's freed, it lingers. It seems to show something that looks, well, to our human eyes anyway, like profound gratitude.
It definitely looks like that to us.
Yeah. So a YouTube creator named Franz recently put together this brilliant video essay examining this exact phenomenon. And we are going to use his research as the foundation for today's deep dive.
It's such a great video.
It really is. Because our mission today is to decode the ultimate cross-species mystery. Like, when you see those videos, does the animal actually understand you're trying to help? Or is there this bizarre, ancient biological loophole being exploited right before our eyes?
And to crack that mystery, we really have to first understand the invisible machinery running inside the animal's head.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So every wild animal on Earth operates this constant inherited threat assessment algorithm. It's just running in the background of its mind all the time.
Oh, it never turns off.
Never. It never turns off. This algorithm is constantly calculating the approach speed of anything in its visual field, the direction of movement, the angle of posture, and the presence of eye contact.
And it's doing this instantly, right?
Yeah, faster than conscious thought. And the default output of that ancient equation is almost always exactly the same. Get away from the human.
Because, humans are recognized as apex predators.
Precisely. We have forward-facing eyes, we walk upright, we move with purpose.
We're basically the ultimate red flag.
We really are. And what makes this algorithm so fascinating is that it's not learned behavior. It's not based on, like, a bad past experience.
Wait, hold on. Let me push back on that for just a second. Are we entirely sure this isn't environmental conditioning?
I know, it sounds like it should be.
Right, because if a deer lives near a busy highway or heavily hunted woods, it obviously learns that humans and cars equal death. But are you saying a completely isolated creature truly possesses that knowledge from birth?
Yeah, the research leaves very little room for doubt here. Dozens of studies on isolated populations confirm the response is deeply innate.
Wow.
Yeah, they conduct these studies in highly controlled environments, and they show this severe threat response happens even in species that have literally never encountered a human being before.
That is wild.
The fear of our specific physical shape and movement pattern is written directly into their DNA. It's a generational inheritance. A predator's proximity during a moment of vulnerability is universally interpreted as the final phase of a hunt.
So let's frame this with an analogy so you, the listener, can really feel the stakes here. Think of their threat response not as an alarm, but like an incredibly aggressive email spam filter.
Ooh, I like that.
Right, so for millions of years, this biological filter has been programmed to instantly quarantine specific predatory keywords. Fast movement, direct eye contact, aggressive posture, sudden noises.
Exactly.
So when a human walks toward a trapped animal, our mere presence triggers every single keyword in that filter simultaneously. The system is just screaming that a lethal threat is imminent.
That spam filter analogy is perfect, honestly.
Yeah.
It perfectly illustrates why approaching a trapped animal is so incredibly volatile. Because to override that system, you have to understand the sheer physical terror of the trap itself.
Right, the immobility aspect.
Yeah. The moment an animal loses its ability to move, its body enters a physiological state of overdrive that humans rarely, if ever, experience. Cortisol completely saturates the bloodstream. Adrenaline climbs to concentrations that actually become toxic.
It's toxic, like it poisons them.
Yeah, literally. In fact, if the animal sustains that level of adrenaline for more than a few hours, the muscles themselves begin to break down. It's a lethal condition called capture myopathy. The panic alone can kill them, even if the trap doesn't.
So the body is just burning through every single metabolic reserve it has, running every emergency survival protocol simultaneously.
Heart rate doubles, and then it doubles again.
You know, I read a description in the source material from seasoned wildlife rehabilitators that really stuck with me. They describe looking into the eyes of an animal in a trap and seeing that the creature is, quote, going somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a very common observation.
Like they are physically thrashing in the dirt, but mentally they are entirely consumed by the overwhelming sensory input of the threat. They're operating purely on the instinct of last resort.
Which is exactly why human rescues are so incredibly dangerous. When you, the well-intentioned human, walk toward that trapped deer or wolf with your wire cutters, the animal's brain completely bypasses your good intentions.
You didn't see a rescuer at all.
Not even a little bit. Its inherited biology simply reads, apex predator arriving to initiate the kill at the absolute worst possible moment.
Which explains why, in all those rescue videos, the animal's thrashing violently escalates the closer the human gets.
Yes, exactly. It's spending its last remaining drops of energy on the only response evolution has ever given it for this specific scenario. Fight to the absolute death to avoid being eaten.
Biology absolutely dictates that the animal should fight until its heart literally gives out. But, and this is the cliffhanger that makes those rescue videos so mesmerizing, field researchers and wildlife rescuers notice that in a fraction of these encounters, there is a distinct sudden shift.
Yeah.
The frantic, violent thrashing simply stops. The animal goes completely rigid and then softens. And it's like, why would an organism programmed over millions of years to fight to the death suddenly just stop resisting the apex predator standing right over it?
It defies everything we know about survival instincts. The biological imperative to fight makes the shift seem completely illogical. So to truly understand it, we need to look at how this plays out in one of the most extreme, high-stakes environments on the planet.
Right. The Franz video highlights a waste study that is just, well, it's nothing short of incredible. So let's set the scene for you. It's December 2005. We are 18 miles off the coast of San Francisco, out in the freezing deep waters of the Pacific.
Not an easy environment to begin with.
No, not at all. A commercial crab fisherman spots a female humpback whale struggling at the surface. She is hopelessly tangled in thick nylon rope lines, and these ropes are wrapped brutally through her mouth, across her pectoral fins, and cinched tightly around her massive tail.
And the situation was actually far worse than just a few tangled ropes. She was dragging a web of 12 commercial crab traps.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and each of those traps weighed 90 pounds.
That's insane.
So that is over 1,000 pounds of dead weight, relentlessly punting a breathing mammal downward into the dark water.
So she is fighting nonstop, right? Violently thrashing and exhausting herself just to keep her blowhole above the surface so she doesn't drown. A rescue team eventually arrives. 4 divers plunge into the freezing water. They are carrying these small, curved rescue knives, swimming right up to a terrified, trapped, 50-foot-long wild animal.
It's terrifying.
And they know, they're acutely aware, that a single reflexive twitch of her 50-ton tail could kill every single one of them in a fraction of a second. I mean, the kinetic energy of a whale that size is basically a freight train.
The tension in the water would have been suffocating. I mean, the divers are swimming directly into the kill zone of a panicking titan. But then this inexplicable thing happens.
Yeah.
The very moment those 4 divers close the distance and physically enter her immediate space, the whale just stops moving.
And she doesn't just pause. For over an hour, she holds her position at the surface while they swim around her body, hacking away at the thick nylon ropes. And the detail that absolutely blew my mind, she deliberately repositions herself.
Yes.
She subtly rotates her massive body. She extends her pectoral fins, actively adjusting her angle to give the divers better access to the lines they're trying to cut.
It's incredible. A 50-ton creature, biologically programmed to view unrecognized movement as a lethal threat, chose to hold perfectly still, while strange, small creatures with Sharp metal tools worked across her entire body.
Okay, I have to challenge the premise here because my first instinct is to assume this is just physical exhaustion,
Sure, that makes sense.
right? Like, is it possible she just ran out of gas? Did she hit the absolute limit of her capture myopathy, realize she couldn't physically fight the 1,000 pounds of dead weight anymore, and simply surrender to drowning?
It is the most logical assumption.
Yeah.
But marine biologists and the divers on the scene firmly reject the exhaustion theory.
Really? How come?
Because what they witnessed was not a physiological collapse. The collapse is limp, it's uncoordinated, and it usually results in the animal sinking.
Oh, right, because they lose buoyancy control.
Exactly. But they described a highly visible, deliberate transition. The rigid, locked muscles fractionally softened, but she maintained buoyancy control. And crucially, the whale actively oriented toward the humans. She watched them work. It was a calculated cognitive behavioral shift, not a fainting spell.
So she didn't give up. Instead, those divers accidentally triggered a backdoor exploit in the whale's ancient mental software.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. To explain why that 50-ton whale held perfectly still, we have to return to your spam filter analogy.
Okay.
We have to look at how predators traditionally hunt and how a rescuer unwittingly bypasses the animal's threat matrix.
So let's dig into the mechanics of that bypass. How exactly do you hack an alarm system that took 1,000,000 years to build?
Well, it hinges entirely on threat pattern recognition. Over countless generations, an animal's nervous system has been finely calibrated to detect one specific sequence of events, the predatory sequence.
Which looks like what?
Predators move in a very highly conserved way. They stalk, they move with sudden bursts of speed, they lock onto their target with aggressive focus, and they close the distance in a direct, unrelenting line.
Right.
That specific sequence of movement is what triggers the alarm.
But contrast that with the physical approach of a human rescuer. You are terrified of making things worse, so you move incredibly slowly. You avoid any sudden, jerky gestures.
Exactly.
And when you finally reach the animal, your focus and your hands are usually on the trap itself, not grasping the animal's throat or body. And of course, you're deliberately avoiding making any loud, recognized, aggressive sounds.
So the animal's brain is frantically scanning its vast, inherited library of threat signatures. It's desperately searching for the match. It sees you, it registers your presence, but the input data comes back empty.
Because you aren't acting like a predator.
Right. There is no recognized biological pattern for a creature moving slowly, avoiding vital organs, and manipulating the environment rather than attacking flesh. Because the brain cannot classify the behavior within its survival paradigm, the crisis response literally stalls.
It just says hangs.
Yeah. It cannot process a non-lethal approach during a lethal scenario, so the physical panic suspends. The animal waits for the program to resolve.
There's an astonishing case study in the source material involving a research team in Yellowstone National Park that perfectly illustrates the stalling effect.
Oh, the wolf story.
Yeah. So the team locates a wild wolf caught in a heavy steel leg-hold trap. As biology dictates, the wolf is terrified. It is lunging at the end of the chain, aggressively snapping its jaws, ready to tear apart anyone who steps within the radius of the trap.
Its spam filter is screaming that it is about to die.
Exactly. And the standard procedure would be to use a catch pole or tranquilizers. But one of the researchers tries something entirely counterintuitive. He steps into the wolf's line of sight and stops moving completely.
It stands there.
He stands there, perfectly still, and locks steady, unbroken eye contact with this lunging, snapping wolf.
Now that sounds crazy.
I know, let me stop you right there, because that contradicts every single piece of outdoor survival advice ever written. If you are out in the woods and you lock eyes with a wild mountain lion or a wolf, you are basically issuing a direct challenge. Sustained eye contact is the ultimate predatory threat. It triggers an attack or a retreat. So how in the world does staring down a panicking, trapped apex predator calm it down?
It seems completely contradictory, I agree. But there is a massive biomechanical nuance here that the animal's brain registers intuitively, even if we don't consciously notice it.
Okay.
You're correct that eye contact is heavily weighted in mammalian communication. But a hunting predator does not just stand frozen and stare blankly.
Right, they're stalking.
Exactly. A predator tracks movement. It calculates the strike distance. Its eyes make rapid micro-adjustments, they're called saccades, as it prepares to lunge. The gaze of a killer is dynamic and intensely focused on vulnerable anatomy.
Ah, I see the distinction. So it's the combination of eye contact plus the micro movements of aggression.
Precisely. Sustained, direct, motionless eye contact that completely lacks any accompanying aggressive posture or tracking movement is a completely alien signal to a wild wolf.
It just doesn't compute.
It sits entirely outside the standard predatory sequence. The wolf's brain is searching for the launch cue, but the cue never comes. Some ethologists actually suggest this bizarre, motionless staring mimics a form of passive social engagement rather than a hunting posture.
So the wolf's biological alarm system is frantically searching for the predator pattern, encounters this weird, motionless human statue, and the software essentially crashes.
The threat response loses its anchor point. The expected sequence of the predator moving in for the kill never materializes. So after several agonizing minutes of this standoff, the Yellowstone wolf actually stops lunging.
Wow.
The frantic energy dissipates. It sits down on the dirt. It holds the calm eye contact with the researcher. And when the rest of the team finally moves in slowly to pry the steel jaws of the trap apart, the wolf doesn't bite. It just calmly watches their hands work.
And the finale of that encounter is what really gets me. The heavy trap clicks open, the leg is free, the wolf stands up perfectly still, looks directly at the researcher who held its gaze one last time, and then calmly turns and walks away into the tree line.
It doesn't bolt in a panic.
No, it just ambles away. It is a complete systemic suspension of the biological threat response.
Yeah, the alarm system hasn't permanently vanished from the wolf's DNA, but in that specific window, it had nothing aggressive to lock onto, so it just stalled indefinitely.
That brilliantly explains the mechanics of why an animal stops fighting while it's in the trap. The pattern recognition fails. But what is truly mesmerizing here is that a stalled threat response completely fails to explain what happens in the moments after the trap clicks open and the animal realizes it is free.
This is where we cross the boundary from basic survival biology into a realm of science that is much more profound and, frankly, significantly more controversial.
Let's go back out to the freezing water off the coast of San Francisco. When the divers finally sliced through the very last heavy nylon rope, the 50-ton humpback was free.
The 1,000 pounds of dead weight just fell away.
The threat was eliminated. Biologically, her instinct should have been to dive deep and put miles of ocean between herself and the strange creatures with knives. But she didn't bolt.
Instead of fleeing, she swam in wide, deliberate, slow circles around the four divers. And then she performed an action that defied every expectation.
Yeah.
She surfaced beside each diver individually. One by one, she approached them in the water and gently nudged them with the tip of her massive jaw before moving on to the next person.
James Mosquito, one of the rescue divers in the water that day, told the San Francisco Chronicle that it felt exactly like gratitude. He said she was thanking them. Now, scientists are traditionally very, very careful with a word like gratitude.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a complex human social emotion. We are taught not to anthropomorphize wildlife.
We are trained to avoid projecting human emotions onto animals, but modern neuroscience is forcing us to realize that the biological gap between us and them isn't nearly as wide as we historically assumed.
So how do we explain it biologically?
We need to look at the actual biology of empathy. For a long time, the scientific consensus was that complex, empathetic emotions and rapid social problem solving were strictly the domain of humans and great apes.
Right.
But we've discovered a specific type of cellular architecture called von Economo neurons, more commonly known as spindle neurons.
Oh, I've actually seen spindle neurons mentioned in human psychology. They're usually linked to how we process deep emotional suffering, empathy, and how we form rapid judgments in social situations.
Yes,
Are you saying these wild animals have the exact same neurological hardware as we do?
they absolutely do. Unlike regular neurons, spindle neurons are massive, elongated, cigar-shaped cells. They act like high-speed biological broadband cables.
That's a great way to picture it.
They physically crosswire the emotional centers of the brain with the areas responsible for rapid, conscious decision-making. They allow a creature to literally feel a complex social situation and react to it instantaneously, overriding base instincts.
And whales have these.
We now know, definitively through MRI studies, that humpback whales have a dense concentration of spindle neurons. Elephants have them as well.
So the whale literally possesses the physical neurological architecture required to feel and process an emotion akin to gratitude.
The structural hardware is undeniably present in her brain. Now, whether she was actively utilizing those spindle neurons to express gratitude that afternoon off the coast of California is something the raw data cannot definitively prove.
Right, because we can't put a brain scanner on a swimming whale.
Exactly. But the existence of that hardware fundamentally changes how you must interpret the behavior of other species.
It radically changes how we have to view elephants, too. The Franz video highlights these incredibly moving records from conservation groups in Kenya. During the dry season, juvenile elephants frequently venture into deep, drying mud pits looking for water, and they sink.
And that mud acts like a natural concrete trap.
Exactly. When human rescue teams arrive with ropes and vehicles, it can take hours of terrifying, noisy work to haul the exhausted animal out of the pit. You would expect a terrified, exhausted wild prey animal to instantly sprint toward the safety of the tree line to find its herd.
But repeatedly, in heavily documented video evidence, researchers observe the elephants pausing. After being hauled from the mud, they don't flee, they turn back toward the loud, chaotic group of humans, and they make deliberate physical contact with the people who just hauled them out. Trunk to hand, trunk to shoulder.
We really need to emphasize the anatomy of what an elephant's trunk actually is, because it's not just a hose for breathing. It is an incredibly complex sensory organ. It contains over 40,000 individual muscles.
This is amazing.
The nerve density at the tip is comparable to a human fingertip. They use it to comfort their young, to mourn the bones of their dead, and to explore their world with incredible precision.
So when an elephant extends its trunk to touch a rescuer, it is not a clumsy, frantic bump from a panicking animal. It's a highly sensitive, data-gathering examination. Researchers note that the elephants will actually hold the physical contact for several long seconds, resting the heavy, sensitive tip of the trunk deliberately against the rescuer's chest or arm, before finally withdrawing, turning, and walking quietly away.
Think about the difference in your own human experience between a deeply intentional, firm, sustained handshake from a friend and just accidentally bumping someone's shoulder as you rush past them on a crowded subway platform.
That's exactly it.
That trunk touch is the handshake. It is deeply, undeniably intentional. And we know elephants mourn their dead. We know they recognize themselves in mirrors, which is a massive benchmark for higher consciousness.
They clearly have the cognitive equipment.
So, playing devil's advocate against the strict bounds of science, do they know we are the ones who ended their suffering?
Well, if we synthesize all of this into the bigger scientific picture, I have to maintain a degree of scientific caution.
Fair enough.
The hard data firmly confirms two monumental things. First, animals measurably suspend their millions-of-years-old threat response when a calm human approach bypasses their predatory pattern recognition. Second, they frequently perform post-rescue behaviors, like nudging a diver or touching a hand, that serve absolutely zero biological survival function. Lingering near an apex predator that just held you down offers no evolutionary advantage whatsoever.
Yeah, there is zero evolutionary reason for a vulnerable juvenile elephant to hang around a chaotic group of humans for 5 minutes after it is completely free to run.
None at all. But science, as our tools stand right now, cannot cross the final threshold into the inside of that cross-species encounter. We cannot know what it is to be the wolf sitting calmly in the dirt, looking back from the tree line, or the whale making eye contact with the diver.
We just can't get in their heads.
We have to remain vigilant that we aren't just running our own human pattern recognition software, projecting our deep human desire for cinematic meaning and emotional connection onto a wild animal's reaction.
We desperately want to see gratitude, so we interpret a nudge as a thank you rather than mere curiosity.
The risk of anthropomorphism is always there. But the science is accelerating. Non-invasive neuroimaging is improving rapidly, and long-term behavioral tracking of elephant herds is expanding our understanding of their social networks. The researchers studying these rescue phenomena are keeping the question wide open. But for now, the animals don't answer us in a syntax we can easily drop into a spreadsheet.
Let's bring all of these incredible threads together. We started with the sheer physiological horror of immobility, the realization that for wildlife, a trap causes a cortisol spike far more terrifying than a gunshot wound.
Yeah.
We explored the mechanics of how a slow, deliberate, non-aggressive human approach can accidentally bypass an ancient, millions-of-year-old biological alarm system, and we ventured into the lingering, inexplicable moments of physical connection, the high-speed spindle neurons firing that happen after the rescue is over and the animal is free to run but chooses not to.
And the actionable takeaway here for you, the listener, isn't just about how to act if you find a tangled deer in the woods.
What should they take away from this?
It's about fundamentally reevaluating how you view the intelligence and the emotional capacity of the natural world around you. But also, think about your own internal threat assessments.
Oh, I like that.
Right. How often do you react defensively based on your own ingrained patterns? And more importantly, realize the power you have to change an entire interaction just by altering your approach speed. When you approach a tense situation calmly, deliberately, and outside the expected pattern of conflict, you can stall another person's crisis response.
That is such a profound shift in perspective, moving from seeing animals or even people as just operating on instinct to recognizing conscious passengers on this planet. And I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought that builds on everything we have unpacked today.
Let's hear it.
If these creatures, whales, elephants, wolves, possess the actual neurological hardware to process complex social interactions, and if they are fully capable of recognizing when humanity, their historic apex predator, suddenly steps outside its violent pattern and acts with unexpected care.
It forces us to ask a monumental question about the future.
Are we triggering something bigger than just a single rescue? Could our modern urge to record, share, and go out of our way to free these trapped creatures be initiating a tiny, unprecedented, cross-species evolutionary shift?
Wow.
By bypassing that ancient alarm system over and over again in forests and oceans around the globe, are we slowly teaching the wild, one saved life at a time, that humans can finally be something entirely different?
It is an incredibly beautiful, scientifically tantalizing possibility.
It really is. The next time you see a viral video of a wild animal tangled in a net or a fence, look closer. The jagged, broken bone on an X-ray or the thick ropes of a crab trap are easy for us to understand, but the invisible, roaring, biological alarm system in that animal's mind and our sudden, clumsy ability to reach across millions of years of evolution to quiet it is where the real miracle is actually happening.